So let's start from here. I come from Switzerland, and I just read a report that was saying that in 2023 we had 1,000 essential drugs unobtainable, although they were covered in the insurance. So the problem of bottleneck in supply chain hits everybody everywhere. It's something that is really present. So the idea of looking why there are these manufacturing shutdown, why there is this sort of disruption at the moment in the way we are balancing is something that touches us not only professionally but as well personally. In Genpact, we gave priority to this. Just and giving you a snapshot of what Genpact is. Genpact was born in 2005 as a spin-off of General Electric, and we focused on growth over the years. And life science is one of the key industries where we think we can provide a huge value in the role of business partners. From that perspective, there is one thing that makes us different and put us in that sort of spotlight. We do not look only on the technology side. We look at the conceptation of organization, technology, process, and data. We do believe that it's very important to understand the intersect and try to basically evaluate the maturity of all these different aspects in order to reach a solution. This is even more valuable in a moment in which we're living a technology leap, where it looks like the technology with this glittering is able to produce that value that we are expecting, and then we get stuck. So let's look into details what that means. Basically, when you look at the intersection, you're looking at the technical operating model of the organization. The technical operating model is where basically you're defining, and understanding how you can connect your capabilities, how you can make informed decision by creating innovation and collaboration. And collaboration and innovation are two words that are going to repeat few times in this presentation because are at the core of what we are going to look and do more in the future. And I will tell you a little bit more after. But what is also important is to look at technology as well in how it's impacting the organization. Sometimes it's said that the best technology from an IT standpoint is the one that is not used because it doesn't generate tickets, right? So that's a bit the thing that we need to avoid. We need to be sure that the technology is implemented in the organization in a way that produces value and therefore is adopted and accepted. This is a completely different approach. But why it is important to work and adjust the technical operating model? We are living in a huge discontinuity at the moment. There are several aspects from a strategy standpoint that are stepping in our pipeline. And in a way, the pandemic has explained and has shown us that these things are real. We can't keep looking at the future with the model that we had in the past because there are changes that are happening and they are basically impacting the way that we manage all the different timeline, all the different horizon. It's new technology are coming there. Think about the idea of mRNA before the COVID and after the COVID. How many organizations were investing in there? How many organizations were looking at their supply chain in order to scale up and produce that technology, which had a completely different setup compared to API or biologics. Think about it, new approvals, the way that strategy goal changed. The rate on M&A, the M&A is another thing that I follow a lot, is very high on our side. So you can be in a situation where you're running your exercise on one organization and then you get acquired or acquire a new organization, your strategic goal changes. How flexible are you in your supply chain in understanding the impact? 75% of the M&A deals fail in giving the expected value. Why? Because when you get on the real things running, the supply chain is patched, the supply chain is not harmonized, and this generates additional problem. So it's important to understand that the flexibility and the resilience of the technical operating model is something that we need to embed in our processes everywhere. To do that, we need to have a much better understanding of who is doing what. And this is something that sometimes we see struggling a lot because this is the core of the cross-operation of the organization. In many situations, we see the middle horizon as the domain of the supply chain. We see technology, we have very strong partner at technology that are providing a huge value on the middle horizon. But then when we move toward the short term, where let's say it becomes a little bit more blurry, the overlap between supply chain and other functions, SAP procurement, SAP operation, we tend to stretch technology and we don't see that there is a specific different focus that needs to be followed on that side. The same applies on the long term. On the long term, we think and keep to looking at adapting the supply chain in order to reach the strategic goal that we have seen before. But adapting is not the scope. The scope should be innovate, should be to look from a completely different perspective. Now, in order to achieve this focalization of different horizon, we need to have a common layer that helps us to communicate, that helps the function to communicate. And there is as well an additional thing. A lot has changed in the last years. If you look at the situation 20 years ago, we had more and more, the focus was internal to the organization. The big boom of ERP that we have in 2000, in the year 2000 was related to the fact that we want to have function communicate to each other. Now, although we have reached that in a way, every organization has an ERP, we are in a situation where actually, we are depending more and more from the external providers. That means that even if we reach high level of accuracy in understanding what is inside, we are not able to communicate exactly our needs externally. We are not able to get information from in terms of value and volume from outside into our organization. And therefore, our decision processes that we were targeting before gets hampered. So what we did in Genpact is to focus a lot. So we started with technical operating model in creating a control tower approach, which is a little bit different from what you can find in other technology. Where is the difference? The difference is that if you scroll any control tower offering, most likely you will end up using an analogy to something that is close to a post office. So something that is able to move package around, in and out, tracking and increasing the speed of that. According to us, if we really want to work around the technical operating model, if we really want to work around creating value for the ecosystem, not only for the organization, the approach should be more like an air traffic control tower. Something that is able not only to control the safe landing and takeoff of each single document flow. You can go from a clinical trials to any single SKU that is moved around, but is able as well to communicate the value around. It has a phraseology that is able to connect your traffic. So it gives you basically that visibility that will increase you not only internally, but as well externally, the capability of improving your accuracy. So this is where we do see the approach. So we need to be able to have solutions from a control standpoint that are able to connect what is coming, the changes that are coming from the market, from the information that are internal to the organization, and grant a level of accuracy that leverages both network. So if we use this approach, where basically we break the silos, and this is something that I've heard a lot about it. We talked about breaking the silos, talked about data. So most of these things are resonating, I think, with the other discussion we have seen. What kind of life cycle ecosystem we can conceive? And the idea is that we go in that direction, we are going to have more ecosystem reaction and less company-based reaction. There is no organization that is applying the Fordian approach that was in 2 centuries ago. Everybody now works together, so we need to as well to create a new way of operating that gives us the opportunity to put a common factor, the information that we have for a better good, as Traceling says, but as well to create new value and new different services. So in the way that we say it, if you see, for instance, all these 4 different items, there is the opportunity to create a completely new set of services where every single organization on any transaction in a granular level can add a little bit more and profit from that. And that profit is not only in terms of money, it's a profit in terms of service to the customer, in making things more available, products more available, more accessible, more affordable. If you move ahead, all of this is possible only if we have a transactional network that gives the opportunity to connect all the single dots. So what we have done with our partnership is really plugging our control tower on the Mint infrastructure with the idea of having a very fast, controlled way. Exactly what happened with ERP basically 20 years ago, just now happened at transactional level, at network level. So basically we are moving the concept from transactional system, which has created a huge boom in the way that we globally collaborate together, to transactional network, which is going to generate a completely new way of value. So any single flow of data and information that you have with any of the supplier of your ecosystem can be an opportunity of creating value. Creating value for yourself, creating value for the supplier, for your partner, creating value for the partners. So we can do that in a controlled way. We can do it in a way that we can interoperate, and we have a very clear way of approaching this. Now, the point that comes after, you can go ahead, is all good, right? But we are life science. And life science is always quite adverse to change, right? So how can we basically scale this up? And we questioned ourselves in the last months, and we decided to come up with a specific methodology that can address exactly this point. I mean, you need to start from what you have, and you have, as you're here, you know TraceLink, you have a network available, you know that is valuable, it's an asset already there. And for sure, you have on your table as well some hot topic, issues. You can decide the criteria. The last one you had just to test it, the one that is more burning for your specific partner, something that is hitting your KPI of your stakeholders. You have issues that depend from outside, depend from some conditions and information that you're not getting. Give us a proof. And with this methodology, in 90 days, we are able to create basically a use case, we call it Rapid Start Prototype, that helps you to pay back the value that you're putting in there. And that is a little bit the bet we're putting on the table, right? With the demo of the technology, understanding what is the case, we can get one single specific case, and we can put it in place in a very short amount of time. We can do it for one simple reason, the asset is there. TraceLink and Mint are live, have been live forever, so we know what we need to touch. We know how we can do it, and we can do it. Once we have that, we can assure scalability, and then we can move ahead. But the first step is very important, and you need to be able to measure each single step you make. So before concluding here, I want to give you another reading key of why it's important. We talked about data, we talked about AI, we talked about the importance of collaboration. I want to give you another perspective that I was thinking about it lately. If we look at technology leaps that have happened in history, right? We have always seen, and we were discussing before, we have always seen them as something that are related to generating new content. You can start from Gutenberg printer, right? Generating new books. But in reality, what has changed is not that. What has changed is the collaboration, the ability to read, the ability of sharing information, and the boom that we have had, even in science, has been strongly related to the fact that people could read what the others were doing. So collaboration was the real outcome. If you look at the internet in 2000, we saw a huge bubble related to creating new content, new sites, and so on. But the real boom has happened with social media, with the idea of generating new way of collaborating. So my question to you is, why do you think that with AI is going to be different? AI at the moment is all about generating new content, facilitating that. But what we can really see and foresee is that in few years, probably months, considering the speed, the point will become generating new way of collaborating. And this new way of collaborating will require as well an infrastructure that helps agents to collaborate together. We strongly believe that the slide you have seen before, the approach that we are providing with the control tower on top of the Mint, is the way of granting that infrastructure that can help you to harvest value as well from the AI approach. Just to conclude, right, just to make it a little bit more on the topic, again, what we are bringing on with our work is our experience on supply chain. We have as well in our firm people that are coming directly from the life science domain. And this is because, again, we are bringing a business cut to what we do. Our approach is modular and adaptable because we know that not everyone has the same journey. And specifically in life science, there is a huge difference in the way that the stack is organized. You have very advanced on some areas, and there are some other areas that information are still unstructured, still probably on paper. That's why it's important to recognize that and have an approach that does adjust to that. We bring best practice, which is something that we need to leverage more and more. The creation of new standards is absolutely relevant to collaborate and comprehend the idea of the phraseology that we saw in managing the air sky. And again, the objective is not only flexibility, but is flexibility and resilience together. And if we look at COVID, we have seen the approach. We have seen organization being able to produce a result, but then being hit back because they were not able to scale back. We've seen organizations that have not even been able to catch the opportunity. So it's a demand. And again, it's not something only from a professional standpoint. It's something that touches our life. It's even personal because when there are 1,000 different drugs that are unavailable in a very pharma manufacturing market like Switzerland, there is something that we need to do about it.
Okay, well, I'm going to start then, but please, by all means, this is your opportunity to ask questions. You talked about the slowness of the life sciences vertical. I've always said that life sciences moves lockstep at a snail's pace. No one wants to be too far ahead, but no one wants to be too far behind. So they're all sort of measuring each other against sort of the same set of scorecards. What are your thoughts about sort of getting started? Because you talked about sort of a rapid onboarding process. We heard from Shabir earlier this morning. I mean, how do you actually put this into practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, the clear point is, and again, it comes from where the life sciences, why life sciences this behavior, right? Because we have seen in the past, right, in the history of life science, rush in direction, and after years we have realized we're the wrong ones, right? So there is always a sort of peer control and checks. The compliance basically creates as well those sort of barriers. But we have seen that, and again, in the latest experience, that the more we share, right, information, the easier it is to understand, the value that this stuff can create in a safe manner, right? We need lost and safety. So, during, for instance, the right to find the right vaccines, we kept the safety principle, even if we relaxed in some of the principles in validating the new drugs. But at the same time, we were much faster than what we ever experienced in the past, right? We can't afford to have 3 billion, right, for new drugs for the long run. So we need to find new ways together. The thing that I can say is, you don't want to be the first, but probably you don't want to be as well the last, right? And everybody's looking in that direction. We are having several discussions, and the discussions are all around, what are we going to do? What's going to happen on the long term? How we can distinguish what is predicted from what is how we can increase our ability to predict. And this is another thing that was coming out. One of the major criteria that you need to consider is that you need to adjust and you need to be able to react quick. That's goes even beyond being proactive. And I'll tell you one example, right? Think about the 7th of October. The 7th of October, we had plans forecasts with very high accuracy happening all over the world. But the world changed in one night, and no one was able to understand what was there. So what was the real approach there, right? Having predictive ML algorithms that were able to understand what was going on, where nobody in the world knew that the stuff was happening, or having the ability to quickly react, putting people together and coming out with alternative plan that could grant a potential new forecast, a potential new result. We live in a world where machines are going to help us quite a lot to organize basically us around a bell curve, understanding what is the historical data, what we can do with that. But we are going to beat more and more from events on the tail, from events that are going to happen, that are going to be seldom, because they're working all together. Any disruption will hit each one. So there is a need of flexibility that is absolutely required, and is where to start. Where you are more rigid? What are the information that you're not able to manage and you're only guessing? This is where I will start, because any flexibility you're adding in there, any information you're able to process quickly in that front is going to help you when the crisis will come.
Thank you. Okay, good. We've got a taker.
Yeah, quick one. I saw that you are leveraging mean solution as a core of basically your solution. Do you receive data from suppliers or any partners? Can you give me 2 or 3 lessons learned while you were integrating with Mint for those companies that are planning to use Mint in the future?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that comes out that when you start to integrate information, you realize that basically some of the information you're relying in the past were wrong. So there is a huge plus that comes in creating a much healthier environment from that perspective. So this is something that the work and basically the visibility that we're creating is giving absolutely the level of advantage. When you're managing unstructured information, you're not only creating a delay, in some cases you're basing your decision when you roll them up on a level of let's say approximation that is much higher than you can get if you can basically at a granular level doing it. The other things that come up is that the speed of integration is much faster of what we were programming at the beginning. So we're not coming with a bold statement like 90 days, even simple 9 months ago. But we realized that by simply implementing, right, we will be able to produce immediately value. And there was another important value that was coming out. And the third thing, which is in our methodology, is the self-sufficiency of the approach. So basically it becomes very tangible to understand the value of the things that you're doing. And that helps a lot as well to then fuel the journey forward. So there are elements that are very strategic and qualitative from that perspective, but they're very tangible in a very short amount of time. And then everybody can get their own lesson. The seamless of integration from a technology and structuring standpoint is there and has been explained by Shabir. There was no challenge from that front. The challenge was really in explaining and adapting and convincing as well from that perspective that the data that were there were not the right one and they were not used in the right way. And that's really when you start to, when we go over denial, you start to see really a completely different speed in catching up and expanding forward. That's why we're making that investment as well. Yeah.
Yael from Danone.
Yeah.
So several questions that are connected to each other. I assume that your teams are not only developing these algorithms on the TraceLink technology, right? So how do you see the future for you? Are you going to go work more and more on this TraceLink technology, or do you plan to anyway keep having a mix of ways of working, and if yes, then why?
Yeah.
So that's my first question. The second one is more the onboarding you make to the customers. At some point, you want also the customers to be autonomous on growing this by themselves, right? That's also the spirit of the TraceLink concept. So how do you manage that as a partner when you are engaging and proposing new solutions to the customers? How do you grow that competency on the customer side?
Okay, great. So on the first one, we have Kinaxis as well in the room, and they can testify that that's our approach. We tend to define ourselves as technology agnostic, right? Which means we don't want to develop technology ourselves. We want to partner with the technology that we believe are key, right, and are going to be leader in the future and not only in the present, so that basically we can help them to bring our business insight. Again, we start from the beginning. We are business partners. We are not technology implementers. So what we do, and we collaborate, and with TraceLink, with Kinaxis, which is another example, we can collaborate at strategy level as well to anticipate with our accelerator features that are going to come in the future in the technology, so that the technology vendor does the technology vendor, and we do what we do the best, which is basically adjusting and transforming the organization from a business standpoint so they can have a higher adoption and create more value. And that goes to your second question. You were right. They were connected to each other, right? In order to create value, we need to empower the edge. I mean, the entire model, and with AI, we go back on the same topic, is going to come more and more. The entire model of having centralized approach that develop and deliver things that are going to be used by others is going to change, right? We are going to have more and more empowerment in the edge, and the technology is going to support that. The no-code capabilities that we have seen today, apart some checks that we saw that were still a little bit scripting, right, are the things that we want to empower. So we have a strong change management practice that looks at the specific needs, can create trainings, can help in ramping up the situation. But the major difference that we bring in, just to clear up the point, is that we do not see the go live as the end of the journey. Actually, that's the start of the journey for us. Why? Because in the core, right, in our DNA, there is the BPO and basically the shared managed shared service approach. We are owning in CPG one of the largest 4PL in the world. So our idea, and that's why we take information, even if, again, the customer keeps centralized and does not share the service, is understanding what is the best practice there, because that best practice brings value to the entire industry. So the biggest way, the best way, right, to be right at the point when you go live is to walk the journey in an incremental way since the beginning with the community that is going to grow. One thing that we have seen, for instance, happening that has hampered the very valuable implementation is that you implement with a team and then the team goes back to do other things or leaves the organization, and you end up with a technology that then doesn't work. You know, and it's not because the journey was not done in a certain way. It's just that you were moving a trolley uphill and then you stop midway, right? And then you lose all the inertia. So it's important to build a change management plan within basically your journey so that when you start, right, there is this level of excitement that brings in because you see the value coming in.